ever had an idea that you just couldn't let go of, or that wouldn't let go of you? You tried to logic your way out of it, you tried to reason your way out of it, you told yourself the timing was wrong, it was too much of a sacrifice, it just didn't make sense. And still it stayed. It whispered, it waited. That's what we're talking about today in this solo episode of Legacy Her Way, because I think some of the most powerful legacies ever built started not with a business plan or a 5-year strategy. It started with an idea that simply refused to leave. Welcome to Legacy Her Way. This is the podcast where we explore how women define and build legacy on their own terms. I'm Tanya Hendrix, your host, and legacy isn't just about what we leave behind someday. It's about the choices we're making right now, who we're building for, what we're building for and preserving, and how we create peace of mind, or what I've been saying all season, harmony along the way. So in this week's, guest episode, you just heard from Katherine Orton talking about Read Aloud, Alabama. And if you've been a listener to the show over the last 3 seasons, you've heard from many women who simply saw a need and said, I can probably do something about that. Or they saw something that just pulled at their heart. And it's like, I want to fix that. I want to do that. So you heard from Katherine that it was her love of remembering and the feelings that she felt, the memories she had when her grandmothers read to her. I've heard from other women. I know a local baker. She's a phenomenal cookie baker, but she does a lot of other things as well. But her love of baking cookies and her reason and the thing that inspired her to start a business is she wanted to create that experience for other families, because she started by standing around a kitchen counter with a grandmother who taught her how to bake cookies. And it was that experience of spending time with a grandparent that really, she wants others to have that experience. It's not that she just wants to teach her own children, but she wants others to have that experience. They want others to have that feeling. That feeling you get from thinking back of, if your grandmother read to you or y'all bake cookies together, that warm feeling that you get thinking about that. You want others to have that same feeling. And so that's what Katherine talked about when she was building or started the Read Aloud Alabama nonprofit. And that's my other friend who has Clary Bakes. You can find her on Instagram. That was her kind of inspiration for starting what she does with baking. But one of the things that has struck me with each person I talked to, whether it's Katherine or my other guests throughout the seasons or personal friends that have started building something, is that they were intentional about it. There's an intentionality behind it. It wasn't just like, that'd be nice to do. I think I'll still start a podcast. I hear people all the time when they find out to do a podcast, like, oh, that sounds great. I think I'm going to do a podcast. I'm like, you have no idea how much work is involved in a podcast. So research it. So if you want to do something, whether it's you see a need or just you want other people to have the experience that you had as you're Katherine. I wanted children to have the same experience I had being read to. And so when you see those things and you got this idea in your head, all these women throughout these 3 seasons of Legacy Her Way, they talked about being intentional with building whatever it is they're building. They just didn't drift into the decision. They made a decision and they acted. And it may have taken a community around them to ask, hey, what's going on with that? What you doing with that one? We talked about this a while back. Have you done this idea? It's one of the things professionally, I'm part of a couple of masterminds. And the accountability part is just incredible because there's someone asking me, hey, did you do this thing to build your business? Did you do this thing? And they circle back and follow up. And that could be the same for you. You have a community around you who helps keep you accountable, but you are being intentional about who those community members are, but you're being intentional about building whatever it is you're building. And what was interesting is I heard her talk about Katherine, when I heard her talk about having worked in West Virginia, reading, not really work, but volunteering, reading to children, and how when she got back to Alabama, and she just kept thinking back to that, like she wanted something like that. She wanted that experience again. It had taken a place in her heart and just took a hold of a place in her heart that she wanted to do that same thing here, because it was filling a need for her. It was reminding her of what she had in the past, but also what she wants to give in the future, like what she wants to leave with others. So as I heard her talking about how that idea just stuck with her and then she couldn't shake it, it reminded me of a time in my life where I had an idea and I just couldn't shake it. And it made no sense at all. But it was just a passion. And so you all know I'm an attorney. I do estate planning at this time. And I've been doing this exclusively estate planning for about 5 years now. Before that, I've done a little bit of everything in the law, but I became an attorney to help abuse women and children. That was my whole reason to go to law school, is to help abuse women and children. And I did that for a number of years as an attorney. But in 2009, and I had prosecuted, so I prosecuted child sex cases, domestic violence cases. And in 2009, I was not doing that anymore. I had a private practice, my own law practice in Foley, Alabama. And a lady from my church came to me, or actually, she came to me and said, the pastors told me I need to talk to you. And I was like, oh, okay. She had been learning about domestic minor sex trafficking. This was 2009. Nobody was talking about sex trafficking in terms of what's happening in the United States in 2009. We were starting to hear things about what things happening in other countries, but that wasn't a United States problem. Certainly, there would be no sex trafficking in the United States, right? But what she was learning is there were a lot of children in the United States who were being trafficked, sex trafficked. And when she was telling these stories, this information to the pastor, he said, you really should talk to Tanya, because he knew my heart and my passion had always been working with abused women and children. So she and I connected. We talked about it, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And I got connected to some people that she was connected with, which is a nationwide organization that helped search for missing and trafficked children. And as I started working with them and I learned more about sex trafficking, and I started meeting trafficking victims, both sex trafficking and labor trafficking victims, the more I learned, the more people I met, the more my heart was just on fire to help these, mostly women. There are male victims, but mostly women I was working with. And I just could not shake that desire to help and do something more than just my volunteer. And I still had to pay bills. I still had a full-time job I was having to work. But I just had this burning desire to do more. And try as I might, I couldn't get a job anywhere else. I applied for so many different jobs with different agencies that either looked for or helped missing children, or there were a couple of agencies that were helping with sex trafficking issues in other countries. I thought, if I could just get to work in this full time, I'd be happy. It never would work out. And then in 2000, I think it was 2011 or 12, an organization or a safe house opened in Alabama, a safe house for sex trafficking victims. And I just happened to come across on the news. It was a safe house that opened in Birmingham. I was in South Alabama at the time. Didn't normally watch Birmingham news, but for some reason, somehow I came across this article, this news clip about the safe house opening in Birmingham. Well, I was going to be traveling to Atlanta like the next week. And so I reached out to this safe house and I said, hey, I work with sex trafficking victims with this organization. I'd love to come and hear more about what y'all do so that when we encounter victims, we may be able to send them to you. And so it's like, I'm heading to Atlanta. I'll be coming can be coming through Birmingham. I'd love to sit down and talk with you. So I did. And the founder and I struck up a relationship and stayed in touch. And, just kind of stayed in touch. And actually, interestingly, when I went to Atlanta for the conference, I saw someone else I knew it was a conference around sex trafficking. And someone else I knew, when I walked in, I was like, hey, how are you doing? She's like, oh, we're trying to get a victim from South Florida back to Atlanta. Well, in the conversation I had with the founder of the Safe House, one of the things she said was they have people willing to fly victims across the country to get them to a safe house. And so I was able to make that connection, help get things moving from some connections I had in South Florida. They went to find this person, to help this person. I mean, it was just, there's a lot of things that happened that weekend to get this person out of a bad situation in South Florida and into a safe house. So anyway, I stayed in touch with this person, this founder, and she ended up coming to South Alabama in my county to speak at an event. It was like September of 2012. And so obviously I went to support her. And as we were talking, she said, I'd love for you to come work for the Safe House. I'm like, well, these are my salary requirements. And she said, well, we can't pay that. I said, well, when you're able to pay it, let me know. And she just kind of laughed. I laughed because it was a new nonprofit. Yeah, they're not going to pay a salary to a lawyer. So anyway, I left that night and was just laughed it off. And then I woke up the next day thinking about it. And every day I woke up thinking about it. I mean, it's just something I could not shake. And as a person of faith, I started praying like, God, what's going on? What is this? Why can I not get this out of my head? Why do I keep thinking about this? And so that event was like in September. In November, I got very serious about this is something I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to go to work for them. They can't pay me, but I'm supposed to work for them. I know this is what God's telling me to do. I don't understand it. How am I going to pay bills? How am I going to do things? And so I talked to my pastor. I said, this is what's going on. I said, I can't get this out of my head. Like every day I'm thinking about it. Every day without fail. And I'm praying about it. And he's like, well, Tanya, that's God talking to you. He's like, you can't deny it at this point. It's God talking to you. So I made the decision that I would shut down my law practice in Foley and go work for this Safe House, this new nonprofit that couldn't pay me. And so I was going to be, quote unquote, a missionary to them and raise some support from my church and family and other friends that would support me for a period of time. So I do that. I shut down my law practice in January 2013, packed all my stuff, moved to Birmingham, put all my stuff in a storage facility, and me and my 3 dogs moved into the Safe House with these ladies. So they couldn't pay me, but they were able to provide a place for me to live. But it was in the house with the ladies, which was an incredible experience. It was exhausting, but it was very eye-opening. It was incredible to live life with these women on a day-to-day basis as they're struggling with trying to get out of that life, where they're struggling with all the things of how to adjust with not being in the world they were familiar with. So I did that for 6 months, lived there, and then it just became obvious that things were just not going to work out the way I'd hoped. And so I moved out, got a job working in the legal field again, but I've never forgotten that. And that just made an imprint on my life. This episode of Legacy Her Way is sponsored by Huntsville Estate Planning Lawyer, helping you protect your family and what you're building and preserve the legacy you are creating. Your family and your life's work deserves more than hope. It deserves a plan. Contact Huntsville Estate Planning Lawyer today to make your plan. So this podcast is about legacy, and part of my legacy is that experience and letting those women know. The legacy, I think, has different parts to it. There's legacy can be about letting people know that they're seen and the impact of that. So those women in that Safe House knew that they were seen, knew that they were loved, they were valued, And those are the same things that you heard Katherine talk about with Read Aloud Alabama, is letting those children know that they're loved, that they're seen, that they're special, that they mean something to somebody. And that's legacy. You're providing dignity to somebody. That's legacy. And it's just phenomenal when I hear about people willing to step out and do something simply because it's the right thing to do. It's something that is a burning desire in your heart, something that you can't shake. You're like, I've got to do something about it. There's going to be sacrifices. There's going to be questions. I mean, I had people in my life who are like, you're crazy. You're going to do what? You're closing down your law practice to go somewhere they're not going to pay you? What are you going to do? I mean, I had a lot of supporters. I had actually the last court case I had with one judge. She came off the bench, came down, grabbed my hands, and told me how proud of me she was for taking the step. I'll never forget that. I mean, that was such an impactful moment. And I had that support. I mean, so many people were like, Tanya, this is great. You're following your passion. You're making a difference in people's lives. And I did, y'all. I did. I know that I did. And I would never change that experience for anything. It didn't work out the way I'd hoped. It didn't work out the way I wanted it to. I anticipated me being there forever. That was just not the case. But I would never go back and not do it. If I could go back to 2012, I would still make the same decision. No doubt about it, because it was such an impactful time on my life, but also their lives. You know, they impacted me probably more than I impacted them, quite honestly. But to live through that experience with those young women is something I'll never regret doing. And the same is for each one of you who have found something you're passionate about. I have a friend who has fostered, I don't even know how many children. And they're just passionate about that. That is something that God has put in their heart, she and her husband's heart, just a burning desire to help these children in need. And as exhausted as they are with multiple children, with their own careers, with ministry, it's just something that they can't say no to. That is something that stayed with them that they can't say no to. And I think you probably have something that you can't say no to. You know, maybe you have something that's just your burning desire. You can't shake it. And what I've learned from my experience and what I've learned in talking with others, when you have something that you can't shake, that's not just restlessness. Maybe it's not even daydreaming. I think when it's something you can't shake, it's probably a calling. And it may be something that you are called to do. I mean, there are a lot of things you have to flesh out and make sure, okay, is this right? Is this the calling? I mean, it takes time. It's not just, I've been thinking about this for a week and yeah, it's what I'm supposed to do. I mean, mine was months. Excuse me, mine was months. And you heard Katherine talk about hers was a long time as well. And everyone I've talked to that launched a business, launched a nonprofit, it was just a burning desire in them for months on end before they're like, okay, this is something I have to do. I can't shake it. I've got to do it. So maybe you have something that you can't shake. You got an idea. You got a passion that you can't shake. And maybe you've had it for months or years, and maybe you talked yourself out of it. Like I almost did, because I kept for months. I was like, well, they can't pay me. I can't go to work for somebody that can't pay me. And I'm not telling anybody at all to stop working and do something that you can't pay bills, that you can't. I mean, you still have to pay your utilities. You still have to pay mortgage. I mean, there's still the realities of life. But maybe you've convinced yourself that you can't do it, that it's just not realistic. Maybe you've talked to some community and they didn't like your idea. But talk with your community. Talk with women about your idea. Talk with your loved ones about your idea. And see if there's a way that you can move forward. Because what's the price of not moving forward? There's going to be a price to pay if you move forward, yes. I mean, I had to sacrifice a lot when I closed down my law practice. There are going to be sacrifices to make when you step out, whether like I did step out on faith or you step out and start something new. There will be sacrifices, and there has to be calculated risk. I want you to go back and listen to the episode with Melissa Chavez where we talked about the calculated risks. You have to take calculated risks. Educated risk. I think Monica Montgomery also talked about educated risks. So don't just jump out on a limb and go, woo, I'm doing this. Be intentional, educate yourself, talk with others, get good counsel. But think about the cost, not only of you stepping out and doing it, but the cost of you not doing it. You know, I'm not going to say that those women that I worked with couldn't have gotten the same amount of love and care from someone else had I not done it. But I don't want to think that they would not have had that. You know, I don't want to think that it would be hard for me to think that had I not stepped out on faith, that one of those people wouldn't have gotten saved because I wasn't the one there to do it. Now, God's going to always find somebody to step in. If God's calling you to do something and you don't do it, that's okay. God's going to find somebody else to do it. You're just going to miss out on that. And it may be that person's going to miss out on it as well, you know, who you're supposed to be helping. Because only you can provide the type of help that you can. And we're all built differently. We all are able to express ourselves differently, show love differently. And so maybe that person that God wants you to help, it really is probably you're the best one to reach them. You're the best one to talk to them. You're the best one to help them. Because something about you is what makes you unique for that mission and that purpose. So think about the cost. You know, those children that are read to each week, had this never started, maybe they wouldn't miss it because they didn't know what to expect. But now that they've got it, they feel special. Somebody comes to see them once a week. I thought when she was talking about that, I thought about when I had a little sister through Big Brothers Big Sisters. I had a little sister that I went and saw once a week. Maybe, and that little girl felt special. Like she got to get out of class, come see me for 1 hour a week, and she felt special. It's when you show up for these children, it's just an incredible gift of love that you're leaving them. It gives them a little bit of a break from their normal lives. So what is the idea that keeps coming back to you? What would it look like if you took one step toward it? Not the whole leap, just one step. I mean, a little bit like start planning. Like, what's the first step I'd have to take? Or what's this next step I would have to take? You don't have to take a huge leap, but it's one step at a time. One thing at a time. There are some real barriers. There's money, and we all know that money's tight right now. There's time. It does take time when you're building something, whether it's building a business or building a nonprofit or just volunteering of your time, whether it's something you're passionate about. There's the fear of failure. You know, I told you, I thought I'd be working for that agency for the rest of my life. I was there 6 months. It wasn't a failure though, because I learned so much, and so did the ladies that I worked with. Maybe you just don't even know where to start. I mean, these are all valid concerns, valid questions. And if you are married, you have to discuss these things, particularly the money and the time part, with your partner. Those are things that you have to be on board with. Like, you both have to be on board with that and understanding the sacrifices it can make. Not knowing where to start or the fear of failure, find your community. Right now we have so much that we can access online that we can figure out where to start. But be intentional about that. The legacy isn't something that happens to you. It's something you choose. Sometimes it's at a personal cost. Sometimes it doesn't even make a lot of sense. But it's something that there's something there that the idea just won't leave you alone. And maybe that's not all of you listening, but maybe you do have something that's been in the back of my mind. I want to do that for months or years. And it may not be starting a business or nonprofit. Maybe you want to write a book. But it's an idea that's been in the back of your mind for a long time and you haven't been able to shake it. Start. Take that first step. But you can leave a legacy. You can choose to leave a legacy, whether it's through what you're doing now, or maybe it's that thing that's in the back of your mind that you can't let go of. So you choose it. I like helping women through this podcast because I like showcasing the women in the Huntsville community right now who are building an impact, who are building a legacy, who are working to protect what they're building. These are some women you can look to. Maybe you've heard something on one of these podcasts. You're like, I really like that idea. I want to learn more. Reach out to that person. Reach out to my guest. They'll be happy to hear from you and help you. So this week, if you've got that thing that just won't let you go, I want you to take one step forward in it this week. Just one step. Maybe it's writing it down. Maybe it's sitting down and figuring out kind of what it would look like. Maybe it's sitting down with your spouse and saying, this has been an idea I've had for a long time, and I really want to take a step towards it. Let's talk about this. And you start talking about the idea. Maybe you just talk with some friends about it first. And bring your community around to figure out what to do. So you've heard in just this 1 week's time, 2 episodes back to back where women had an idea and they went with it. And you've heard this, so many women on this podcast have talked about they had an idea and they went with it. It may have been in season 2, we heard from Nancy Becker about Invisible Warriors, where she wanted to help women in the military to be seen. And so she started Invisible Warriors. Maybe it was Dr. Jenny Robinson, who saw a need in the city and decided to work towards meeting that need. I mean, you've heard from so many women through the 3 seasons of Legacy Her Way who had an idea and it wouldn't let go. It just would not leave them. And they started building on purpose. Back in 2012, when I was preparing to close out my law practice and move into this new season in 2013 of working with a sex trafficking organization, I had a phrase that said, on mission, on purpose. I was going to live on mission and on purpose. I encourage you to find your mission and find your purpose and live on mission, on purpose. Build something that lasts on your own terms because you are called to it. Whatever that idea is, I hope you start waiting for the perfect moment. The moment is now. You've got this. You can do it. Take that first step this week. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Legacy Her Way. I encourage you to subscribe and share this episode with others so that others can step into their purpose, can step into their calling, and follow whatever idea it is that is nagging them and won't them go. All right, thank you all, and I'll see you in the next conversation.